Everyone, I'd like to call to order regular meeting of council, Monday, April 19th, 2021. Approval of the agenda, please. Councilor Majinski.
The Monday, April 19th, 2021 regular council meeting agenda be adopted as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Norbury. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Adoption of minutes, March 8th, 2021 special budget meeting minutes. Recommendation, please. Councilor Majinski.
The Monday, March 8th, 2021 special budget meeting minutes be adopted as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Kirkowka. Any errors or omissions? Staff? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 3.2, March 26, 2021 special meeting of council. Recommendation, please. Councilor Norbury.
That the Friday, March 26th, 2021 special meeting of council minutes be adopted as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Lehman. Any errors or omissions? Staff? Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 3.3, April 6, 2021 regular meeting of council minutes. Recommendation, please. Councilor Majinski.
At the Tuesday, April 6th, 2021 regular meeting of council minutes be adopted as presented.
Seconder, Councilor Lehman. Any errors or omissions? Councilor Howe.
Page 15, top of the page, it says the motion was carried that we would support TR days through the successful grant from Manpower. I don't think that motion was carried, maybe I'm mistaken.
Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Just give me one moment. I apologize, the motion was deferred.
Correct. So the correction on the minutes be deferred instead of carried?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Howe. Any other errors or omissions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Any other business arising from the minutes, Council? Staff? Thank you. Moving on to consent agenda. Recommendation, please. Councilor Norbury.
That all items in the April 19th, 2021 consent agenda be moved for information.
Seconder. Councilor Majinski. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any items council would like to lift from the consent agenda? Councilor Howe.
7.4.
7.4. For discussion, seconder. Councilor Majinski. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councilor Howe.
The promotion on the floor that we moved the discussion on providing a letter of support directly to the Premier's office and forward a copy of the letter to Penticton Council to our next regular meeting of council.
Seconder. Councilor Kirkowka. Discussion. For discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any other items on the consent agenda? Okay. Moving on to bylaws. 8.1, tax rate bylaw 701, 2021 to 2025. Report dated April 19th, 2021 from the Chief Financial Officer requesting first 3 readings of the tax rate bylaw 701, 2021. Recommendation, please. Councilor Norbury.
The council gives the first reading of the District of Tumbler Ridge 2021 tax rates bylaw number 701, 2021.
Seconder. Councilor Kirby. Discussion. Councilor Howe.
So from this point forward, the rates will be set.
As outlined in this bylaw.
Okay.
At this point, they are subject to change until we adopt. Councilor Howe.
So the rates can continue to change and go up and down, provided we continue to get to the 2021 collection amount. But just like why I asked the question is in this district plan here, the 2021 budget highlights, between there and now, the rates are changing because our collection or assessment is changing to go along with it. So at what point do we stop changing the rates to match the collection? Is it this point now where we think we have the right collection amounts?
I think it has to do with assessment. Ms. Thompson, can you clarify, please?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So we received our final assessment numbers the 26th of March, I believe, or right around the end of March. So these are the proposed rates that our assessment won't change anymore.
Councillor Howe?
The total amount of municipal property taxes that we expect to collect is $9,166,787.
Ms. Thompson?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 2, please. Councillor Kirby?
Mayor Bertrand, I'll move that council give second reading of the District of Tumbler Ridge 2021 tax rate bylaw number 701, 2021.
Seconder? Councillor Norbury? Discussion? Councillor Howe?
I still can't be in support of these rates due to what we've done with light industry. I don't think increasing the taxes on all light industry by 44% is supporting businesses in Tumbler Ridge. One particular group within light industry found a way to reduce their costs. We've effectively moved the goalposts on them to make their cost savings zero by increasing their taxes. And I also think it unfairly affects every other business within the light industrial rate, raising the amount of tax paid by them by nearly 44%. So I can't vote in favor of this time.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Questions? Councillor Krokowka?
So just like Councillor Howes mentioned, I reached out to P&G and stuff like that. With CNRL shutting in on one of their services, we could see this tax rate actually hit us through P&G. And right now we have a ton of residents are already complaining about the service fees that P&G is charging municipality, as residents in the district as well. Talk with P&G, that could go up. Just be aware of that. I'm not saying it's based on our tax rate, but obviously it's costing them more with CNRL pulling out. There's more thing there, and we're actually increasing their taxes as well. So by doing that, we can see the P&G service to our residents, businesses increase that service.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Recommendation 3, please. Councillor Norbury?
The council gives third reading of the District of Tumbler Ridge 2021 tax rate bylaw number 701, 2021.
Seconder? Councillor Majinski, discussion? Councillor Howe?
Are you aware that we are potentially taxing Peace River Coal an additional 44% on a portion of their property as well?
Was I aware of that specifically?
Council, not you.
Would any councillor like to answer that? Councillor Norbury?
You know, we did see all of the items in the tax class, I believe, last year.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Did we pick up all 3 on the negative? Yeah. Okay. 8.2, Financial Plan Bylaw 700, 2021 to 2025. Financial Plan, third reading. Report dated April 19th, 2021 from the Chief Financial Officer requesting third reading of the Financial Plan Bylaw 700, 2021 to 2025 Financial Plan. Recommendation, please. Councillor Krokowka.
Council can still, I'm reading the alternate, council can still consider amendments to the operating budget?
Seconder? Councillor Majinski. Discussion? Councillor Krokowka.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So again, I'm bringing forward in regards to the flatbed bank assessment and we cut the district's staff's budget to try and make it work for council, because we couldn't agree to spend $875,000 as the request to do it 100%, not, to me, Mickey Mouse it. So I still have an issue with that being in our budget. I mean, to me, when staff is asking us for $875,000 to do a job completely, and then we just start throwing numbers out there, and then, to me, we're gonna expect a golden star with half the budget. You know, that'd be like asking Ms. Thompson, she comes forward with $5 million to run the municipality, and we cut her budget to 2.5 and ask her to do the same thing in same services, same staff levels. We want it all. That's what we're asking them to do now. I don't agree.
Okay,
I'd like to put a motion forward that we remove the flatbed bank work until 2022.
okay, seconder, Counselor Howe. Discussion? Counselor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. If the concern is you're doing it half measures, why isn't the recommendation to do it all?
Counselor Krokowka?
Because I think what happened was, Councilor Norbury, is the district applied for a grant and didn't get it. I think this gives them a chance to reapply for that. I see the problem every time we apply for a grant and we don't get the grant, we just go do it. So why would the government give us grants? I mean, they watch us just like we watch the government. So if we constantly apply for grants and are unsuccessful getting them the first time around, well, the district on bridge, let's go do it. So why give them the grant? We'll give it to somebody else. And I think we've set that precedence with the governments. We just seem to go and do it. As soon as the district applies for a grant and they don't get it, we just go ahead and do it anyways. I think that's why I'm asking to hold it off, because it gives them an opportunity to reapply for that grant through the province and give their reasoning why. I mean, it's their bridge too. It's not just worrying about the pump house. If that thing keeps coming around, they can take out the bridge which is on the highway. So there's more to that whole bank assessment than just our pump house and to me the capital.
Counselor?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I guess it sort of makes sense that, you know, to utilize grant money, but at the end of the day, like when there's concerns about contaminating our main pump water source, we've already seen the damage done to that area. I don't think we should just say that we can't do it because we didn't get a grant. There's some things that should be done. We need to protect our assets down there. I prefer to get it all done, but a phased approach is the way that we can try again for some more grant money, or take our time at it versus taking a huge hit. So I'm in favor of keeping it.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Howe?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Krokowka in, you know, I'm concerned of the precedence that it sets, that every time that we get denied for a grant from NDIT, we just go and say, we'll just do it ourselves. Then eventually they're going to stop giving us money altogether, and we're going to run into this more and more and more. The pump house was already armor guarded. They already put big rock in there to protect the pump house. That was done years ago. And why was it not done properly at that time? If we're so concerned about Flatbed Creek turning around and taking the pump house out, why wasn't it done properly the first time? As far as I'm concerned, I went down there and looked at it. I think the pump house is fine where it is. It would take an absolute catastrophe to pull that pump house out of there. And I don't know that building the bank up as high as that we're anticipating we're going to build it up is actually going to do anything if you have a flood event that's big enough to take the pump house out. The pump house is actually sitting about 10 to 15 feet higher than what the campground is sitting at, where the bank washed away. And the water didn't come into the bank, it only washed a bit of the bank away. It's already armor guarded. I've been against this since the beginning. That's one of the main reasons I've been voting against the budget. And I'm going to vote again on this motion that I don't think we should spend $875,000. That is going to balloon. It's $500,000 in this budget. It's not going to be 75 by the time this is done. This is going to be $1 million. And we can replace the entire pump house for $1 million. And we probably get federal grant money at that time if you had an emergency and you lose one of, I think we've got 3 pump houses that provide water to the district of Tumbler Ridge. It's not only that one. If we lost this pump house, we do not lose water to the district of Tumbler Ridge. We have other pump houses that provide water, namely the one across the road, and then one's out by the co-op. So to me, I'm going to vote in favor of this with Councillor Krokowka that we remove this from the budget.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. The other thing that concerns me too is I've been looking at the area below the bridge, and there's so many trees that are strewn across the creek, that I think the first thing we need to do is get rid of those trees to stop impeding the flow of ice and water that comes down. I mean, anything that comes down is gonna get hung up on those trees. I don't know, like, do we have to get, we'll probably have to get permission from the ministry, but I think that's a lot cheaper fix, or at least a stopgap to stop the water from going onto the campground. Get rid of those trees, so the water has somewhere to go.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. The issue of flatbed, just the damage down there came first, and then was brought to our attention. We could see the erosion, worried about the pump house, and then staff were going out looking for a grant to find it after. So we've been aware, and I guess it's what do we want to do? How do we want to protect our asset down there? I mean, the campground is very well used, and, you know, I hate to see that bank cut back till all of a sudden we don't have that bottom electrical place, you know, and the playground, etc., because that's really quite an attraction there. So my reason for voting in favor of this was from the get-go was my impression is that the pump house was under, it could, again, maybe with the back ebb of the river be in danger of flooding out. So it was just to carry that a little bit further till we can see what happens, you know, with the flooding this year. Like, if it's not gonna happen this year, we could defer it to next year. But I mean, we should start making a plan, and really a plan that doesn't rely on grants for flooding, because there's a lot of other places in BC that are flooding badly in the spring, and this area just might not ever be of an importance to say that we've got to do it. I don't know. But that was the whole point of my voting in favor, was that there was a real issue with the pump house as well. So.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howe?
I mean, you make a good point. I mean, this is exactly, it could be done. It could be deferred to next year. We've missed this flood season already, right? So we can apply for the funding for next year, hopefully get the grant, but realize that, you know, the district of Tumbler Ridge just can't be a strap for words here, but a spot where we can just go and get all the money we want to do any project that we like see fit. I mean, if that needed to be done, Councilor Krakauka raises a good point. The pump house is 15 feet higher than the campground. Yeah, we might lose some of the campground with a bad flood, but if we lose the pump house, you're just as likely to lose part of that bridge, and that would be a government infrastructure and stuff that they should be concerned about. I think us reaching to take that step to say, oh geez, you know, it could take out the pump house. Could take out the pump house on the other side of the river for all we know. We don't know which one, and that one's not armor guarded. So to me, it's a big reach and a big stretch that we're going for here when we've already done the work to provide protection for the pump house in a previous time. I don't know why we think protecting 100 meters downriver or 200 meters downriver of the pump house is going to protect the pump house. I don't see the logic in that. I don't think we're qualified to make that type of a decision.
Well, I think in the initial report, it wasn't the actual pump house that was in jeopardy, it was the actual well down below, but I could be mistaken there. Councillor Kirby?
Mayor Bertrand, with the money that we've set aside, can we not put this into an asset management or into a plan that deals just with the riverbank itself and flatbed campground to, you know, just have that initial money in there to see how we can put it? Because down the road, if we don't get the grant, we're going to have to decide, are we going to protect our asset? So this way we would have some money in asset management just for flatbed.
And that was the initial reasoning for that motion that I made on the 500,000. It was continue the work that's already been done. You know, eventually the whole bank is going to need to be rip-wrapped to be not only protect our assets but also protect the campground. So that was my approach, was thinking that it could be done in phases. We were all looking at the time to try and cut costs on the budget, and I thought that was a low-hanging fruit that we could definitely move into 2 phases. The assumption that NDIT won't give us any more money because we continue to prioritize our capital projects, I think that's an assumption. In my opinion, I think, you know, any community that identifies a capital projects that is of priority is going to make it happen one way or the other. So I think that is an assumption, and NDIT is very well aware of our finances, as anyone could be, given that it's all on public notice. So I think that is an assumption, definitely. Councillor Norbury, then Hal.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Yeah, you kind of touched on the 2 points that I wanted to make about, the water getting in there. It's about the watershed. And like, don't a couple of our councillors sit on NDIT grant board? Has there ever been any discussions about communities going ahead with their projects anyways? We're not going to give them any funding. Has that ever been discussed? It's not.
Yep. Councillor Kirby or Majinski? Go ahead.
So that supposition that NDIT would stop giving us grants is baseless. Oh, I wouldn't say baseless. I apologize.
Councillor Hal?
Speculation or not, I think it's something that needs to be discussed and thought about.
Considered,
I
yeah.
mean, it certainly looks that way, that if NDIT has a tough decision to make between granting Chetwynd or granting Tumbler Ridge, and they know that specific project will get taken care of Tumbler Ridge because we've saved money for our asset management plan, those decisions could be made, and then to me, that's the conversation worth having. But Councillor Kirby made a good point there that we can add this into asset management plan and take a little bit more time to think about it and try to get a grant towards it, and then look at we want to do it again next year and get some better understanding or clarity around we're about to spend $875,000 at some point, or $1 million, whatever it's going to be. We in a previous council, I don't think it was this council, we asked for how much it would cost to power the upper section of Flatbed Creek. I think it was the previous council. It was $180,000. And we thought, that is atrocious. There's no way we'll spend $180,000 to put power in to all the upper sites at Flatbed Creek. We could just as easily put power in and create another 50 sites up top there with power for the amount of money that we're talking about spending to protect what? To protect a road that's that is eroding slowly year after year. It may continue to erode, but it may not. But we could move into a different phase and do something completely different down there. A splash park down there, $400,000 ask. That's what the Lions was going to put into a splash park if we did it down there. And we chose not to do it down there. We wanted it up in the community. So the Lions backed out of it. They were going to put that money into it. So just try to give some context to the amount of money that we're talking about putting in here. To me, that's a lot of money to spend to throw some rocks over the bank into the river and hope that it works. I don't know, use our own dump trucks to throw rocks in the river and see if it works.
Councillor Norbury?
Got a little caught up in Councillor Howe's discussion about the splash park down there. And if they did develop something down there, it'd be foolish not to protect that area, right? Sorry.
It's okay. I'll come back. Any other discussion? Councillor Howell?
Just can I have the motion reread?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Thank you. So the motion reads that we remove flatbread bank work until 2022.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. It finally came. One of the things I think we do need to think about is when we put off projects like this, the amount of time it takes to bring them back. I look at our building envelopes for Town Hall, Public Works, and the fire station. And we saw that year one. And we put it off. Fair enough, we made those decisions because we want to get a little more information here. And we're in year 3, and we still only got one building. And we have 2 buildings that still need to get done. So I think there are times when we're concerned, we hear that this happens year after year. That means the danger is going to continue. And with that exposed bank, I think it has potential for more damage. So I think we should be staying the course.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Thompson, the question about asset management came up here, and I was just wondering your thoughts on whether or not the flatbed bank could be included in our asset management plan.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So I was as council was having the discussion, I did look back through from where the funding was coming for flatbed, and the amount that was being used, some of it was coming out of PRA and the remainder was coming out of surplus. So this project being removed, it was coming out of surplus, not out of taxation. So I just wanted to note that. In regard to asset management, it is a priority for staff at this time for asset management. We do have our water and wastewater that we're slowly working on in order to bring a report back for flatbed. We can do that as asset management, but it is a very slow process for us with our staffing levels at this time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kirby?
Mayor Bertrand. So if we were to vote in favor of this recommendation on the floor, if we choose to in 2022, that money is still available through surplus. So it would be an amendment to add it into asset management.
To some degree, but the PRA money wouldn't be available. Is that correct, Ms. Thompson?
Correct, and it was a very small portion that had, that staff were proposing to pull out of PRA, which was $100,000. The remainder of that was from surplus. So that money would stay in surplus and probably be used for other projects going forward, or, you know, that is funds that are, oh, 1 second.
Absolutely.
Confer with Ms. Sanders.
Absolutely.
Thank you. A little bit of clarification from Ms. Sanders. So if the project were to go ahead this year, we could actually fund it all through PRA because it is a 5-year plan. But at this time, we had 100, our first submission through the PRA shows 100 there. So we are able to change that going forward with PRA, but that surplus money would still be available going forward as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Can staff make it clear, was the PRA money to be used this year for just that $100,000 from the PRA need to be put into a project this year? No? Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? I'm going to speak against this motion. Again, I think the phased approach is okay, and I don't really agree with all or nothing, to be honest. The argument of all or nothing doesn't sway my opinion on the phased approach. So if there's no other comments, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Is there any other adjustments council would like to bring forward on the financial plan before we read the third reading? Councillor Howe?
I just have a question on page 46. I don't quite understand how in our 2021-2025 financial plan, our municipal property taxes budgeted for 2021 is $99.648 million. We just approved 9.116. What's the change there?
Ms. Thompson?
Sorry, I'll let Ms. Sanders respond to that.
Thank you.
The property tax, Mayor Bertrand,
Thank you.
property tax on the graph includes payments in lieu of taxes, grants in lieu of taxes, and the 1% that we get from BC Hydro, Telus. So it's all lumped into one.
That's where the discrepancy between the two
Yes.
numbers are? Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Councillor Howe, follow up?
That's it, yeah.
Okay. Any other items, council? Or a recommendation, please? Councillor Norbury?
Dave Fair, excuse me. That council gives the third reading of the District of Tumbler Ridge Financial Bylaw number 700, 2021 as amended.
Sorry, Ms. Thompson?
Thank you. So staff has to amend the bylaw before we bring it back to council, so we can't have a motion to amend it at this point.
Okay, very well. Thank you. Moving on to new business. Sorry, Councillor Howe.
Just a question to staff. There is, with removing, it was $500,000 that was in. Now that $500,000 is removed from the flatbed project. Does that now put us in a spot where we have a surplus budget again, or still deficit budget?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you. The budget remains deficit because we're pulling that out of surplus.
Okay.
So we'll do adjustments and see where we're at, but we were pulling that money out of surplus, so we still stay within that deficit.
Okay.
Thank you. 9.1. Official Community Plan Review and Update Project, RFP Award. Report dated April 19th, 2021 from the Director of Corporate Services regarding the Official Community Plan Review and Update Project, RFP Award. Recommendation, please. Councillor Kirkowka.
That the consultant contract for the OCP review and update project be awarded to WSP Canada Incorporated.
Seconder. Councillor Lehman, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 9.2. Tumbler Ridge Mountain Bike Association Pump Track Agreement. Report dated April 19th, 2021 from the Director of Corporate Services with the Tumbler Ridge Mountain Bike Association Pump Track Agreement for approval. Recommendation, please. Councillor Kirby.
Mayor Bertrand, I'd like to move that council approves the pump track park agreement between the Tumbler Ridge Mountain Bike Association and the District of Tumbler Ridge.
Seconder. Councillor Norbury, discussion. Councillor Kirkowka.
So I just have a few things if I may. One, I'll talk about the agreement. Of course, I'm not a lawyer, but like, to me, I have an issue. It's fine, I'm not turning down the agreement, but when I look through this, to me, we had a non-for-profit come forward that was willing to go out and fundraise, get grants, whatever they may have to do, to build a pump track for the District of Tumbler Ridge and its residents and tourists. I'm curious what that cost us. I really am, because I don't think that we needed that such an agreement that I actually reached out to some members from the pump track. They had to get a lawyer to read it for them. We've cost that non-for-profit more money for a lawyer to go through the documentation that we eventually own the pump track for $5. I actually think that's crazy. And maybe we have to, but I don't understand why we would. To me, this stops other organizations from coming forward and wanting to go after grants and everything and start building that stuff for the District of Tumbler Ridge to eventually take ownership. In my eyes, reading through all this lawyer documents and the wording and liabilities and stuff like that, I know for a fact, I reached out to 2 board members and they actually had to get a lawyer to read this through for them. Make sure that they were not, to me it sounded like they were concerned that, you know, whether it was the board members itself or the group itself being held accountable, and they're building it for Tumbler Ridge. I mean, we ask people to do this. We're constantly saying to people, come in with your idea. Tell us we want to help. We'll help you fund it, we'll help you get grants. But then we ask them to go through all that. And then we charge them more headache to get a lawyer. I'm very concerned about that. Very, very concerned about that. Like, I don't know if that's a normal thing, and I'm not coming down to staff, so please, just so staff knows. But maybe this is a normal thing, but maybe it's not. Maybe when we have organizations like that to come forward, we can have an easier agreement when it's going to be owned by us. Right? We're paying $5 for a track that they went and fundraised. I don't want to throw the number out there. I believe the district gave $130,000. Here you go. Can't remember. But the amount of money they went and did on their own for grants, and this is what we came up with. And they had to get a lawyer, so now we've cost that group money that they could be using to build something.
Yeah, I mean, reading through the agreement, I felt that it was a lot of due diligence on our part, but I didn't really see a whole lot of inconsistency with our lease agreements as well. Our lease agreements are quite complicated and have a lot of language in it as well. Ms. Thompson, did you want to comment on that, please?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I understand where certain members of council are coming from, and I can, in my experience as CAO throughout my career, we've always had agreements like this. The wording in the agreement is fairly simple. I mean, we had, well, in the long run, it is fairly simple, and we were working with the TRMBA with, I didn't realize that they had reached out to legal counsel. We had been working with them on changing some of the wording that we did have in the agreement. I also am not sure what has been done in the past in the district for the agreements, but it is a standard contract document that we use.
Councillor?
So just a follow, and not just that, but I guess the concern is, it's like us, when we hire somebody to come in and build a pump track for us, do we have them do an agreement with us? Like, that's what we're asking the Thunder Ridge Mountain Bike Association. Here, build us a pump track. Well, actually, I think they approached us, so we own it. So when we go build something for ourselves, do we have the same agreement that we're signing off on ourselves? Because that's really, truly, we own it for $5. I just think it's concerning when I hear that they had to get out and go out and get a lawyer. They were very concerned, it sounded like. Now, maybe they didn't express that to staff, I don't know. But the other concern I have, so I'll leave that one be for now. The other concern I have is the timelines. Like, I'd be curious, I mean, maybe Councilor Kirby can answer this. I'm hoping with some of the stuff finally starting to come forward, that they can make the build here. Like, it seems like this has been a long, drawn-out process to get them an agreement and all that stuff to be able to do that. I'm just curious if this still makes their timeline. It seems like we've held this up a lot.
Yeah. Councillor Kirby?
Mayor Bertrand. You know, I think the group has done due diligence hiring their own lawyer. You know, and at the end of the day, the TRMB is happy, the district of Thunder Ridge is happy. We've got a document in front of us that we can sign off on where both groups are going to be well covered. Now, yes, as soon as this gets signed, yeah, other things will fall into place. I mean, they've got an application for naming rights to go through. That can go in, that can get on to an early May meeting, and then things are, you know, hopefully things are still on track, and we can see ground break in July, August. And, you know, if there isn't anything else, that whether some other thing, they find something when they're digging, who knows what can slow something up, but we're gonna see wheels spinning here, I think, before the snow flies again. Not maybe this week if it flies again, but next winter.
Thank you. Councillor Howe?
I'm in support of the pump track at this time, but I do understand where Councilor Pkg is coming from, and if staff has a suggestion, if there's any easier way that we can do this in the future, we'd definitely be open to it, I think. But speaking on behalf of another group that I represent, the Tumbler Ridge Old Timers, we have a very similar agreement with the Tumbler Ridge Old Timers. It's a dozen pages or 14 pages, and we have a nice users agreement that we got to go through. And unfortunately, I think this is a product of the world that we live in. And you know, I don't like it any more than you do, Councillor Pkg. But at the end of the day, if something did happen over there, or money was misspent or misused, I think this is the checks and balances, I think, to make sure that we don't get in any trouble. And if we didn't do a document like this and something happened over there, I'd be all over it, right? So that's my take on it.
Well said. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. You know, to share my agreements with Councilor Howe, whenever we're doing contracts, there's ambiguity, it causes issues. So I want organizations to have an easy time coming in, setting up shop, building a community. But we do need to make sure that all our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted.
Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 9.3, Mineral and Coal Land Reserve. Report dated April 19th, 2021 from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding support of Boulder Garden Area Site 1001642. Reserve requested by the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation. Recommendation, please. Councillor Norbury.
Council support the continuation of the existing reserve that encompasses the Boulder Gardens area, as it has geological significance within the UNESCO Global Geopark and the Tourism Industry in Tumbler Ridge.
Seconder. Councillor Lehman. Discussion. Counselor Norbury?
Mayor Bertrand, you know when I brought this forward last time, I wanted to hear back from Tech. Tech has reached out to us, and I'm glad that they have said that they recognize that reserve in the area and want to support its preservation. So,
Thank you. Counselor Kirby?
Thank you. Mayor Bertrand, I would have liked to have seen number 2 added to that as well. Is if we're voting on them separately, or if we can add number 2 to the recommendation of the council propose an expansion of the Boulder Gardens area site 101642 reserve to include Babcock Falls, the shipyard Titanic.
Take that as an amendment. Seconder for the amendment, Counselor Norbury. Discussion on the amendment. Counselor Howe?
So is Tech in favor of that as well?
That wasn't asked of Tech. Counselor Norbury?
thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I'm in support of the change. Tech's response was glowing of their desire to protect these areas. I would say glowing, but it shows that they recognize these areas' importance. And I think it's not too big of a leap in our own judgment to accept it or not.
Thank you. Counselor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. Babcock Mountain, there's a cluster of hiking trails there. There's Babcock Falls Shipyard, Titanic, the Armada, Boulder Gardens. You know, coming from the Geopark and the Wolverine Northern Mountain Society, those are like the 3rd highest cluster of hiking available to Tumbler Ridge. For one, they're very close and they're easy compared to a lot of the other hikes. And then once you get to the end, the payoff is like significant with the views you're going to get. There's hiking, there's wind. They're used like all year round with you know, your ice climbing and snowshoeing. I think you know, they play a huge part in our tourism, and they account for almost 35% of the social media that comes not from residents here, but from people traveling that are posting on Facebook. So, you know, just on a note to that, there's reasons why we could see if Tech would include that. Also, the Emperor's Challenge, even though the route has changed over the years, it's still on that mountainside. So it'd be worth putting the question out, because, I mean, as far as I know, Tech has no interest in going into that area again, but I think now is the time to ask.
Counselor Kirkowka?
Thank you, Richard. So my only thing by adding them both, maybe we cloud the water a bit back to the government. The government's asking if we want this. We're saying yes, please. We've already reached out to Tech, yes, we want to still have that area. And then do the second motion, or whether we add to that motion that we would ask Tech first or whatever. But I just wonder if we would cloud the water going back to the government, because we're saying yes, we want that one saved. Can we also expand it? Now, does that hold up both? And something may happen to the one that we're asking for us to hold on to, would be my only concern.
Yeah, I'm curious about the process of adding those 2 areas to that reserve as well. I would say it would be a fairly expansive process. Counselor Howe?
So I like the way the recommendation was read at first. It seems to me that the majority of council can support number 1 that's been read. Number 2 has some debate on it. And my concern, again, comes back to the taxpayer of Tech. I want to make sure that I'm in here representing their interests and making sure that things are checked out before we just go and assume things to somebody that could be absolutely astonishing for our community to get up and running again. And I wouldn't want to put any roadblocks in their way. That's what my concern was on this one the first time that we read this. I just wanted to hear from Tech. We heard from Tech on recommendation number 1. They are okay with it. We have not heard from Tech on recommendation number 2. Why would we go and put words in Tech's mouth for them? I don't want to have anything hold up the possibility of having another operating coal mine in Tumbler Ridge. So I have to vote against adding the second part to the motion.
Yeah. Okay. Counselor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. As I read this, it does state that continuing the existence of number 1, and then it's only to propose to Tech. To propose just means to suggest that this is something that we want in the future, and just to put it in their ear. It doesn't mean that they have to go for it this year, but it's already making that proposal to them that this is also what we'd like to include down the line. So it's okay to take it out, but I think I read it as just that, a proposal.
Councillor Kirkowka?
Thank you. Yeah, but we're not proposing it back to tech. With having both those motions together, we're actually sending it off to the Ministry of Mines and Low Carbon, right? That's the only reason I can't vote for in
Okay.
favor of number 2, but I definitely like to see it come on the table and do it where we add tech into it. I'll vote opposed to adding that recommendation.
We'll call the question on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Defeated? Thank you. Go back to the original motion, discussion on the original motion. Councillor Majinski?
Sorry, on the original motion with the addition of 2,
No,
just
number 1. Yeah. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Would council like to bring forward the motion? Councillor?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. That council reached out to tech in regards to reserve protections of Boulder Gardens area, site 101642, and about Babcock Falls and the shipyard.
Did we get that, staff? Can we maybe read that back just to ensure we captured all what councillor was trying to get? Please.
One moment, please.
Thank you.
So I have that council reach out to TAP in regards to site 101642 about the shipyard Titanic. I think I missed something right in the middle of that.
So it would be the addition to the reserve of Babcock Falls and Shipyard Titanic. Is that correct, councillor? Seconder? Councillor Kirby, discussion? Councillor Majinski?
If we were to reach out, if we were to reach out to the Mineral and Coal Water Reserve, wouldn't they do their due diligence and reach out to TEC? Because they are the primary stakeholder in that area. And this is a protected waterway, so they wouldn't be mining that area anyways. They wouldn't be putting in roads alongside of it. There's already a road there, so I don't see an issue of proposing this idea. I just don't understand why we would have to reach out to TEC once again when they would have probably said that we're going to probably put in some new infrastructure in the area going forward. And it might impact the shipyard or Boulder Gardens, but they didn't say anything like that. And it's all in close proximity, so
Yeah, I think,
if they had concerns, I'm sure they would have let us know.
yeah, I think it is due diligence to ask the proponent though, because we would be taking a stand on advocating for the addition to reserve without asking the company that is mining that mountain if they're planning on it. So it would be us taking a position without checking with our proponents or stakeholders. So I think it would be due diligence to contact TEC. Councillor?
And to clarify, in the last letter, Mr. Cruz said that the ministry did reach out to them and they had no concerns. So he just reiterated it back to us. So he had to answer it twice.
Well,
This would be the same thing again.
yeah, but
Reiterate it back to the ministry as well as us.
But we can't assume that either. I mean, we can't assume that the ministry is going to contact these companies every time. We can't assume that the ministry is going to know our intentions for these areas as well. I think it would be very, it's a big factor of relationship building to give the person the opportunity to respond. And if they have to respond to the same question twice, so be it. It's still that fact, Councillor.
And so this is going to be a tourism impact. So if the ministry goes and asks TEC, what are your objections to us putting this as a protected site? TEC is obviously going to come back to us.
They didn't the first time.
because they didn't have an objection. If they had an objection, they will.
Mhm.
So either way, if they're gonna have an opinion, they're gonna voice it, and they're gonna come to the main proponent, which would be the tourism sector here.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Councillor Lehman.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's just common courtesy to ask Tech first, because, I mean, they've been here since day one. I think it should come from the district, just, as I say, as a common courtesy, because I just think it's wrong for them to hear it from the ministry instead of hearing it from us. And I don't think that would, I can't see that creating a problem with radio.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Howe, did you have something?
Yeah, it's just like, the map that we have here is just a block, it's like a square. It's like, does that mean they're not gonna mine anywhere within that area, or that area is banned to mining? So, and that is the block that's labeled as whatever site 1001642. So is the new area that we're proposing within that block as well? So to me, we would be prudent to find out where it actually is. And if we don't know where it is, perhaps Tech doesn't know where it is. And you know, that to me is my concern. I do not want to put anything in the road of a coal mine being able to develop and tumble the ridge and keep going. And like I've said it once and I'll say it again, is that if we had some tourism area out there that had to be moved, shifted, or changed so that it could accommodate a coal mine, I would be 100% in support of making sure the coal mine went. We've got lots of other places where you can hike and tumble the ridge. So to me, I do not want to take the chance of holding it up at all. So I'm going to vote against it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Majinski.
And to be very clear, we didn't reach out to Tech because we didn't initiate this. It was the mines that did, not the district because of tourism. It was the mines had just a lot of land allotted saying it was going to be a protected area.
That's right.
So for us to do our due diligence, the mines have already been, the ministry's already been doing that.
Mhm.
So we just wanted to get some further information.
Any other comments, questions? Councillor Kirkowka.
So we can just get this confirmed that it's number 2 that's on the table. And we added that we're asking Tech if they have any concerns.
Ms. Thompson, can you please reread the motion?
Thank you all. Just give us one moment.
That,
That council reach out to Tech in regards to the site regarding the Boulder Gardens area, site 100642. I might have misread that number, but no, that's correct. 1642. And the addition to the reserve of Babcock Falls and Shipyard Titanic, or to include the addition of Babcock Falls and Shipyard.
Councillor Kirkowka.
So I guess my only concern with that is when we're reading these numbers off, is that one's already confirmed in number 1 that we've already voted on, or it was carried, is we don't know what the numbers are for Babcock Falls and Shipyard Titanic. So maybe we should have staff, don't hold the letter up, maybe we should research the right number or location that we're asking them for, because to me, when we pass this back to Tech, the concern I would see is pull up my email, well, I've already answered it. I might actually, I don't know if it is or not. Like I said, I haven't looked at the map too, it's a block. I don't know what's all in there.
Yeah,
So
so,
maybe we should make sure we have, if it's within the block, we don't even have to send a letter. If it's within the same blocking number, but if it's outside that, we should supply that number to Tech so they can pull it up on their screen.
yeah, I think the number is referring to the number of the reserve that the Boulder Gardens is encompassing. Yeah, no, good point, though. It definitely needs some clarification there. Councillor Majinski.
Yeah, so once we get this letter from Tech saying they have no concerns, is it going to come back to council so that we can make another motion and to apply it back to the mines or the Ministry of Mines?
if this motion goes forward, yes. Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I mean, when I saw the map, you know, I did my little typing into Google, looked at the maps. Babcock Falls, Shipyard, and Titanic do not fall within that area. It just seemed easy to add the number into expanded. I mean, we could just vote this down and send Tech a letter about the creation of a reserve for Babcock Falls and Shipyard. If we're concerned about that, let's just shoot this down. I'll make another one about a creation of a reserve.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure on the process, but to try to expand that actual reserve to a spot over here, a spot over there, it's not really at reserve, so I'm not really sure. Councillor Howe?
And why are we expanding the reserve? Where did that come from? Whose thought process was it that we need to expand this reserve? And are we taking into account all stakeholders? Because how do I know that 417059 does not belong to Peace River Coal or Shell Canada or Canadian Natural Resources or somebody else? So we're going to send a letter to Tech and say, do you have any issue with it? And they'll say it's not even on our coal lease. We have no idea where this is. I don't know where this came from, and I think this needs to be voted down, this one. And if we want to do more work with it, then we need to do a little bit more homework on our own end to find out where these locations actually are. Just to go to say, yeah, we'll just approve those, I think that's irresponsible.
Councillor Norbury?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I brought this up. And unlike yourself, Councillor Al, I'm sorry, I don't believe that we should just allow coal mines to dictate to us our areas of importance. I think there are times we need to take the initiative to protect our natural areas, especially when, you know, Councillor Curry brings up some great points I haven't thought about. There needs to be a time when we need to protect our areas ourselves. Now, this looks like Tech's area. They get back to us and say, this isn't our area, well, let's go to somebody else. But I don't want to hold this up. If council would prefer to hear from the coal mine first, I want to keep this going in a forward direction.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Majinski?
And first and foremost, the mines, from the Ministry of Mines would know who has leases in that area, so reach out to them first. And they will reach out to CNRL or whoever else may have a pipeline that goes through there or a gas well or whatever, so I think we're doing it backwards.
Okay. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I like the fact that it was an option to discuss on here, and if there is an ability that isn't hard to expand a boundary, there's no, I think there's no harm in asking that question. Now, we can vote this down. I have no problem to vote this down, and I don't mind doing some legwork with the TAC committee and with the Geopark and myself, just phoning Mr. Peru, just having a chat, and if it's something that we can bring up down the road after we, you know, it's in a couple of my portfolios, and I have no problem doing some background work on this, and then maybe bringing it back at another date.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Lehman?
Well, we just send a letter to them. Ministry and Tech, if you're not concerned about the Tech first.
Yeah. I definitely think a little bit more research is needed in this area, and realistically, we're identifying 2 geosites out of 54. So realistically, if we want to try and protect some of these sites, we should be looking at it as a collective instead of just piecemeal. But I'm not in favor of the motion on the table here. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? Defeated, thank you. Councillor Kirkowka?
Then we direct staff to get the correct site numbers for the reserves for Babcock Falls and Shipyard Titanic.
But they wouldn't be considered reserves at the moment.
Okay, then site numbers.
Site numbers, I guess.
Take out reserves, sorry.
Seconder? Councillor Norbury, discussion? Councillor Kirkowka.
Yeah, I appreciate Councillor Kirby's concept of going and doing the legwork and trying to get that, but I actually think it should be staff that goes out and gets us the correct site numbers so we have them. And especially if we're looking at pursuing to do or ask first in mind if it's theirs, and if it's not theirs, if it's Shell Canada, whoever it may be. Before we approach the government, we have to have the true site numbers, and we're not off. That's why.
Thank you. Councillor Howell.
So the Geopark has not asked for us to do this. This is a council directive. Correct?
As far as I understand.
Okay.
Councillor Norbury.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I support the motion as it stands. The only other information that might be useful is who owns the rights to that area. Figure out who it is.
All rights. Councillor Kirkowka.
Thank you. Yeah, and I understand, Councillor Howell asking if somebody's coming forward to ask about these, but I support where Councillor Nerby says, you know, it is our job. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've never hiked Shipyard Titanic, but my grandson might one day. But if it's not there, and if they don't plan on mining it anyways, it's a question to ask these companies. As long as it doesn't hold up the industry, which I fully support not holding up a restart of a mine or windmill projects if we get more to them or anything. But it doesn't hurt to protect some of these sites for the future generations. And I think that's our job. I mean, you see it all over Canada, not just Tumbler Ridge. And I think these are very prominent locations, especially Shipyard Titanic. It's over the world that people talk about the Shipyard Titanic, and you see pictures everywhere. So that's why I put the motion on the floor to get the right site numbers. And I would think when we get the site numbers, we actually know who owns it. I could be wrong. I support the motion, at least reach out and start the process.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hall.
I'm again concerned about the can of worms that we're going to open on the direction of council, not on the Geopark or any recommendation by any other group. We as a council have decided to, like Mayor Bertrand said, pick 2 out of 55 sites and decide, yeah, we need to protect that area. We are then setting precedent. We're opening a can of worms on this thing so that what? So that we can hopefully get, what do we get, $4.5 million in tax revenue from the mines? Are we ever going to get $4.5 million tax revenue from tourism in this town? Why take the chance? Why open that basket? Like, to me, just, you know, if you want to have a discussion, have a better discussion about it with the groups that are involved in it and find out which ones are pertinent that we take care of and which ones aren't, so that we don't take the chance of holding up any industry from developing and keeping the community running. That's where our tax dollars come from, is from these industries. I just don't see the point in taking the risk.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Norbury.
Just my question to staff, does the motion encompass getting information back on who owns the mineral rights to the area? Or should we make an amendment to that?
Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. No, at this time it doesn't, the way the motion is.
Thank you. Councillor Norbury.
I'd like to make an amendment to that motion to include getting information on who owns the rights to those areas.
Seconder for the amendment. Councillor Kirby. Discussion on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Defeated, thank you. Any more discussion on the original motion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Moving on to 9.4, COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant. Report dated April 19th, 2021 from the Interim Director of Finance regarding starting a COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant Reserve. Recommendation, please. Councillor Kirkowka.
The council established a COVID-19 Safe Restart Reserve.
Seconder. Councillor Norbury, discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. 9.5, Investment Management Services, report dated April 19th, 2021 from the Interim Director of Finances regarding submission and evaluation of the EOI for investment management services. I'd like to move this for discussion. Seconder, Councillor Howell. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. In reading over the report, I felt it might be beneficial for staff to kind of give us an overview on this one. Ms. Thompson, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. The Investment Management Services EOI was sent out and it was closed on April 8th. We only received an answer from one proponent. Staff scored that proponent based on the information that had been presented. So we've summarized that for council. At this time, staff doesn't have a recommendation to go either way. When you look at the information and summary of the submission that had been put in, staff has summarized that and what had come out. We do have a full EOI that if council would wish to review, that would be something that would be proprietary information that can be reviewed within at a further meeting of council. However, the main thing to consider is that fees would be 0.05% to 0.1% of the investment that they would be investing for us. So there, under number 8, there is some information on what those fees would be. And the less their fees, the district's return on their hypothetical portfolio would be 1.38%. Part of this is because following the community charter, the ability to invest in high interest returns is not available. So the district's hands are fairly tied in following the community charter. So at this time, staff doesn't have a recommendation because there was only that one proponent that had responded.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Councillor Howe?
How was the IMS sent out? Like what platform did we put it on to look for people to provide us?
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Member Transfer Council. So it was put on the district website, Civic Info. It's just those two, Civic Info and the district's website.
Councillor?
So would there be any flavor in council or staff, can correct us if we're wrong here, but could we not reach out to a few of the major chartered banks and tell them of what our plan is? And as long as their investments fall within the terms of the charter, that we could get them to look at investing the money for us? I mean, to me, this type of a return is pretty paltry and garbage in my mind. And I certainly wouldn't see us want to get locked in. I know interest rates are really low right now, but I wouldn't want to see us get locked into something here where we have to do an agreement with this group for 4 or 5 years or something. So is there any flavor, or can we, or why can't we not? Because from the way I've read in the community charter, that you absolutely can invest in chartered banks, provided you have 100% guarantee of your principal investment. So,
Ms. Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So within that EOI, there was a hypothetical portfolio, right? So they're saying, hypothetically, this is what we would do. We can reach out on our own to see about our investments. At this time, we had just reached out for the EOI for an investment firm. So, it's whether or not council has the flavor to allow staff to get a hold of others, because our other banks and that, because our investments are in July is when they come due, or a couple come due in July, right? So we have a little bit of time, so we did want to move ahead with seeing if there was a proponent out there that would take this over, or if staff can reach out and say, hey, we've got this, and what can we do for interest rates?
Okay. Oliver?
yeah, well, it's certainly my flavor that we would say, yeah, this is not good enough, and reach out on our own, and however staff feels that they want to do that. We took a shot at an IMS, it didn't work. As far as I'm concerned, it didn't work, but if we want to reach out to the major banks or investment companies, there's tons of them out there, and see what we can get. I mean, we all know that it's very difficult to invest municipal money. It has to be guaranteed 100%, but there are 100% return investments out there that are higher than 1.43%. I checked into it with my investment guy, and he's absolutely, they're out there. We'll guarantee you 100% of your principal. you may get 0 on it, but we will guarantee you the principal, but there's the ability that you can get higher. So to me, that type of submission just isn't even in the ballpark as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I as well would be in favor of looking at some alternative, only because 77 isn't a great score in my mind. So I'm a little bit leery about going that route. So, yeah, I have nothing against checking out other options.
Thank you. Councillor Norbury?
I guess my only concern is, our tendering process and how this would affect it, right? We don't directly engage organizations or business, right? So, how would this affect that? Right? It's fine, we're able to engage in direct negotiations with an organization that we're proposing?
If we were to recommend to move forward that staff continue investing our money, I believe that we are able to engage with the banks in that regard. Ms. Thompson, can you clarify that, please?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. In a little sidebar conversation here quick with Ms. Sanders to confirm, staff would go out to the major banks and the credit unions and saying, this is what we have, and like we would send them correspondence requesting what their interest rates would be if we invested with them through this process in this amount of money, and then we would be able to choose who would be giving us the best interest rate, especially when it comes to investments.
Councillor Howe?
How do we put that into a motion? That's what I would like to do.
Certainly. There isn't a motion on the floor. So we can direct staff to reach out to all of the major banks in the area with correspondence to inquire on long-term investment rates. That sum it up, Councillor?
I think so. I think our CAO is writing down a motion, but it sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, and as far as the report goes, I'm disappointed that we only had one proponent apply, because there isn't really anything to compare it to, as well as there isn't an industry standard to compare it to. So I'm definitely not satisfied with this ELI, and I don't know if it's worthwhile going for another one. I tend to agree with Councillor Howe. I think it might be worthwhile to engage in the banks now. Councillor Howe?
Yeah, and investment companies. Like, I don't want to limit it just to banks, because there are other opportunities outside the banks. But again, the criteria, they have to fall under the community chart and the MFA. Let our staff get out and see what they can pound the pavement and find.
Councillor Majinski?
Yeah, I'd like to see what our current banks have to offer as well, and that be part of our baseline, because that's what we're currently getting, and that should be part of this.
Definitely.
And to see if they can better rates.
Definitely.
When they said they could. And
Yep.
6 months ago.
Yep. Ms. Thompson, were you able to jot down my rambling?
I was, just give me one moment, please. Ms. Sanders concurs. So what I've written is that staff requests long-term investment rates from investment companies, major banks, and credit unions to maximize investment income.
Sound about right, Councillor Howe?
So,
Seconder? Councillor Kirkowka, discussion? Councillor Howe?
just one last thing, you will come back to council with some ideas and proposals. Okay.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Schedule of meetings. Any issues, council? And notice of motions. Any notice of motions this evening? Councillor Kirby?
Mayor Bertrand, put the notice of motion forward to direct staff to review PNG delivery rates for the DTR and provide a report on the process request at BCUC reduction in delivery rates.
Thank you. Any other notice of motions? Ms. Thompson, did you have something?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I apologize I wasn't quick enough to respond, but if you could give us 1 second, we also need to look at another meeting date in order to meet the deadlines we have for the financial plan and the tax rate bylaw. So we just need to confer for 2 minutes to see if we need,
Certainly.
if we need another meeting, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
I apologize.
Sorry, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. So, in order to meet our deadlines, we would need, we would be able to bring the third reading back to council on the 3rd of May, but we would require a special meeting. It can be done during the day. It won't take staff long to throw an agenda out for to do that, and that would probably be the only thing on that agenda. But a special meeting in order to adopt the financial plan. We need it before it would be ideal if we would have it before the 5th.
Couldn't we do the third reading and adoption on the same meeting? No? Ms. Thompson,
Sorry.
are we not able to do the third reading and adoption in the same meeting?
I don't believe we can. It has to be third reading at one and then adoption at the next meeting. We can't do them in the same 24 hours between.
Okay,
I was gonna say, it's gotta be 24 hours in the vote. So the vote's at 5:30, it has to be 5:30.
okay. Thoughts, council? Councilor Norbury?
Can we do it on, say, Tuesday at 6?
Tuesday is a potential day, yeah. Council? Tuesday in the evening or during the day? Or 24 hours? Okay, can't avoid. Okay, Tuesday at 6, going once? Going twice? No, May 4th.
Oh,
May 4th, that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Councilor Norbury?
I see a lot of discussion. Would Wednesday morning work better? Wednesday morning at 9?
Ms. Thompson?
Sorry, as we're a sidebar again here, I apologize, but the meeting would have to progress to that point where it would be adopted by 6 o'clock on Monday in order to go at 6 o'clock on Tuesday. So it may be tight. It just depends on how quickly everything else goes in the meeting. So Wednesday would be probably preferable, and then it could be during the day, anytime after that.
Council? Councilor Norbury?
Let's do Wednesday morning then. 9 a.m.?
Council? Everyone okay with that?
As long as you've got quorum. I might not be here.
Yeah, I possibly might not be as well, but, yeah, I mean, and we can certainly move to Wednesday morning. It's whatever council wishes. Ms. Thompson?
If council wishes to look at their schedules and we can discuss, we can always create that special meeting after today.
Later on. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. So let's pencil in Wednesday morning at 9 then. And if there is any issues, just let myself or Jen know. Any other notice of motions this evening? Okay, councillor's business? Any councillor's business? Thank you, Councillor Norbury, for your report. Councillor Kirkowka?
Yeah, I don't have council business, but just on the fuel, just curious if Council Kirby has brought the new set of drawings yet for the Geo Center.
Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I will have that next week. Amanda was meeting with one of the team coming in for a site visit on Friday, so next week I will have that.
Thank you. Other councillor's business? I had a couple of meetings. I had a meeting with the Tumbler Ridge Museum Foundation in regards to the repatriation of the tree mask that's sitting in our community center. The meeting was with Soto First Nation, Treaty 8, Tribal Association, McLeod Lake Indian Band, and Kelly Lake Cree Nation. It was the first meeting of the collective, and it was really good to hear everybody's opinions on it, and I think it was agreed upon to continue the dialogue moving forward with another meeting, but also giving some of the stakeholders the opportunity to do a bit more research on it. So nothing was really accomplished. I wouldn't say nothing was accomplished, but no decisions were made in that regard during the meeting, but we did portray to the stakeholders there that we are committed to repatriating this mask in some way, and really wanting to protect it from the climate as well. So it was a good meeting, and more to come in that regard. I also had a PRD meeting last week, and a couple of highlights there was possible creation of a couple new functions. One of them being a Hockey Canada function. So that would be to support the Hockey Canada contract that the City of Dawson Creek has to continue various tournaments every year in Dawson Creek, as well as the function was possibly created for the Geopark and Museum. This would be create a steady funding stream through the regional district, region-wide. So now that it has passed through the board, it has to, a bylaw needs to be created, but also it's not approved until a referendum takes place. So a referendum needs to take place to ask the taxpayers of the regional district whether or not they want to support these new functions. So that's going to be slated for our Geopark and Museum in the fall, and then we'll see where it lies after the referendums. Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I would like to schedule a meeting with yourself and Councillor Kirkowka and I and the two boards to discuss just exactly how that works. I know there was some questions from the Geopark board on moving forward with this, and that if it will go to a referendum, that we should probably do some planning up until that to, hopefully have the Geo Center out and moving within the region and start doing some, advocating for the, economic benefit that these two organizations bring to the region as a whole. So, better to start that right away. I could explain some of it to the board, but I think you have a better understanding, and with that, what those service levels will mean or not mean, and if you can still apply, even if that service level isn't, if it's defeated, then what are the other options? Because moving forward, we're going to have a big hole in the budget moving forward, and we're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm available for meeting, certainly. Try to answer any questions. It is a confusing process, definitely. Councillor Kirkowka.
So just through the PRD, so they're unable to fund the Geopark this year. Just hearing wind of it. Is there a reason that the funding wouldn't go through as it has in the previous years, or did they apply it in a different form?
So the function that was used to fund the Geopark and Museum is called the Economic Development Function on 40. Now, in PRD staff investigation of the policies and letters of patent that was in the strategic plan to review all of them, they recognized that the letters of patent, which is basically the existing bylaw that is basically the law of that function, those letters of patent didn't support what that function was being used for at this time, as far as giving out grants. It was described as in a much more limiting way than what we were using that function for. So staff realized that it was actually illegal what we were doing. So that function has stopped. Surplus was distributed this year, and that funding stream has stopped until a conversion bylaw can take place. Reading through that letters of patent, it was back in 1977, and Tumbler Ridge wasn't even named on that letters of patent. So my first order of business was to ask to add Tumbler Ridge onto that function, but it takes time to get it worked out. So that's where the funding stream dried up this year, or the reason for it, Councillor.
So I get that concept. If there was no way of them asking whether it's a grant aid or whatever, and aerial directors would be able to vote in favor of seeing some of their money go to the Geopark or the museum or wherever. I know previously, I know it was through the active zone that we used to vote Diablo Sport, the hockey in Dawson. But there's not another mechanism there that opens up?
Not necessarily. They do have an application with the electoral area directors. There is a specific grant funding stream just for the electoral areas. So there is an application in to them at the moment. But the other grants, there's one to grants to community organizations, and I've lost the name of the other one. Those ones had a much more significant or lower budgeted amount than, say, the ECDEV was last year. So they still had the intake of the regular nonprofits in the area, and there wasn't an opportunity to add more at that time. Councillor?
So when would they hear back from the electoral areas?
Honestly, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think they're expecting it soon. Councillor Kirby?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. One other question for yourself regarding the mayor's nonprofit roundtable that we were holding before COVID. I've had groups wanting to see that brought back in some fashion because there's been, just a lack of communication through boards. And also we've got two issues with marketing with some boards needing to find marketing dollars or figuring out how to market some of their projects. So I'll bring that forward to a TAC meeting just to hit all the groups, but something that's coming down the pipes is we're having an issue with marketing in our nonprofits and how to afford it and how to go about it. So those are just some updates. But for the roundtable, I don't know if you could Zoom it or work with it through the community center, but there is a need to have, or a request to have that.
Absolutely, it definitely was valued, and I agree, it is needed. So the last time we spoke about this, at first we were marrying the nonprofit with the Let's Talk meetings, having it beforehand. And I thought it was very successful. I thought all the nonprofits were appreciative of the open communication opportunity. And then our former community services director wanted to move that communication to the community center and really centralize that all of the nonprofit communication at the community center. And I haven't had an update to where we're at as far as that goes. So yeah, I'll definitely look into that, Councillor. Thank you. Councillor Kirkcalka.
Yeah, so just on, you actually hit on it, that I believe the community center was supposed to be taking that over, and we should just try to get some clarity from staff on where they sit on that.
Yes.
I mean, there was two, not only the senior director there, but there's other employees there, and it was directed pretty much right there in the meeting, how and who was gonna take accountability for that. They thought it was a better forum for staff to handle it anyway, so. I just think maybe we need to update
Yeah.
our new CAOs to understand where that's going.
Yeah, I will definitely follow up on that. Any other councillor business? Okay, question and answer period. Ms. Thompson, did you receive any questions?
Thank you, Mayor Bertrand. I did not.
Okay, thank you. Resolution to close meeting. I move that the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with the Community Charter, Section 91 C, I, and J. C is labor relations or other employee relations. I is the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And J is information that is prohibited or information that if it were presented in a document would be prohibited from disclosure under Section 21 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Seconder, Councillor Kirby. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 10-minute recess.